A farm boy whom nobody likes one day accidentally ran into a rebellion led by a necromancer of the legacy profession. At the critical moment, he unexpectedly steals the necromancer's powers instead and obtains a second profession, gaining the ability to cultivate the undead. From that moment on, he began his rise from the bottom all the way to the peak of life. In Fangchuan City, the class awakening ceremony was about to begin. A young man stepped down from a carriage and thanked Uncle Jiang before watching him drive off. He thought that, just as expected from the annual awakening test, the place was incredibly lively. Within the barrier, humans underwent their profession awakening test once they reached adulthood. The professions varied greatly, and their rarity levels did too, ranging from N rank, R rank, SR rank, SSR rank, all the way up to UR rank. The rarer the class, the stronger the combat power, and anyone who awakened a powerful class could enter a better academy directly. All around him, young people who had come for their awakening were praying to legacy class holders for blessings, hoping for a better outcome than usual. Someone nearby was requesting that the great Master Berserker bless him with an S-rank class in this test. Another person urged the line to hurry since it was almost his turn. Someone else was sincerely asking the great heavenly maiden, whose stories she had admired since childhood, to bless her so she could become a noble legacy class holder. A different guy scoffed and commented that someone was daydreaming in broad daylight. Hearing all this made the carriage boy curious, so he asked a nearby teen what everyone was doing. The teen explained that rumors said a new legacy class holder would appear in this year's test, and since there were still 4 vacant legacy class slots, everyone was naturally praying as hard as they could. The carriage boy began to think that everyone was unusually eager to improve this year, which meant business should be good for him. Just then, a signal sounded and someone announced that the test was starting. Results were read out one after another. Lin, who with an R-rank class at level 10 and 13 mana points, when Sha with an N-rank class at level 8 and 8 mana points, and G5 with an F-rank class at level 34 and 55 mana points, who was admitted. Someone nearby remarked in envy that G5 actually had 55 mana points and wished he had that much. The young man from the carriage then took something out and casually asked if the guy would like a tomato that could increase his mana. A tomato that increased mana instantly caught everyone's attention. He explained that he was a spirit plant doctor, and that this was a superior variety he had carefully cultivated. Each tomato, he said, could increase a person's mana by 5% for 5 minutes. The tomatoes were priced at only 5 gold coins each. The boy mentioned that he also had hunger sweet potatoes that could keep a person full for an entire day, slimming cucumbers that burned fat, and power potatoes that increased attack power by 10%. The others looked doubtful and hoped it wasn't some kind of scam, but he explained again that his produce could increase mana and even help with weight loss. Since they were all sick of eating energy bars every single day, they eventually decided that trying something new wouldn't hurt. He announced that it was first come, first served, with limited stock. Once sold out, that would be it. The first customer could even get a free sample. The guy who stepped up first was only half convinced and kept examining the tomato, but after taking a bite, he felt an instant surge of energy. He exclaimed that his mana had really increased and that his body suddenly felt lighter. Someone else rushed over, wondering if he was seeing things. He recognized the vegetables as spirit crops developed by the Extraordinary Academy's Agri-Science Institute, supposedly supplied only to S-rank students. The boy explained that this was a special event for the testing assembly, and that everyone here had the potential to become students of the academy in the future. The man immediately asked to have all of the stock wrapped up for him. The others were not pleased and argued that they had been there first. Now that they had witnessed the effects firsthand, they also wanted to try them. The boy thought to himself that although he only had a farmer-type class, ever since reaching max level, the vegetables and fruits he grew somehow gained beneficial buffs. He admitted inwardly that he had used a few marketing tricks, but the effects of his produce were the real deal. Later, in front of a certain shop, another man appeared while the boy was packing his things. The man listed off the items he had brought: chestnuts and pumpkin seeds for 5 gold, flour and rhinoceros dung for 7 gold, sugar for making wine for 10 gold, along with mana and energy potions totaling 257 gold coins. The boy handed him 10 gold coins for his trouble. He then mentioned that he still didn't have enough money to buy high-grade fertilizer to improve the fields. The man thanked Brother Lin Fong and asked why he didn't simply grow more spirit plants if they were so useful. Lin Fong replied that it wasn't as simple as it looked. The man commented that it was a pity someone as talented as Lin Fong since childhood had ended up like this. Lin Fong told the man to hurry home since Auntie Zhao was waiting for him. After watching him leave, he couldn't help thinking that despite being called a genius since childhood, he had only awakened an N-rank farmer class. He joked inwardly that when he went to burn joss paper for his arch-druid father, the man might just jump out of his coffin in rage. Maybe it really was a case of opposites canceling each other out. A herbalist mother and an arch-druid father somehow produced a farmer. Still, when he thought about it carefully, he felt pretty satisfied with his peaceful life. He didn't have to go to the battlefield and lose his life like his father, and he wouldn't make his mother worry. Even if it was only for her sake, he had to manage their family farm properly. As he continued walking, he suddenly wondered why it felt like rain on a clear day. Before he could react, someone came crashing down right in front of him. Lin Feng froze and wondered if the city wall had collapsed or if the demon clan had broken in. A moment later, the fallen man shakily got back up and announced that the legacy class holder, Necromancer Hizang, had defected and intended to hand over his class legacy to the demon clan. Someone nearby shouted that they needed to report this immediately. But before anything else could happen, a huge clock materialized behind the man. Lin Feng stared, completely stunned, wondering what on earth was happening and whether handing a class legacy to the demon clan was even possible. A surge of energy suddenly swept across the entire area. A voice snapped at him, calling him an idiot for not running and asking if he was eager to die. The speaker said that if he hadn't been injured by forbidden magic, he would have escaped the city long ago, and that once he handed his class legacy to the demon clan, he would gain an immortal body. He added that since he had stalled for this long, the academy had probably already noticed. Lin Feng quietly tried to sneak away, thinking that he had clearly walked right into some kind of murder scene and should leave before the man realized he was there. But he was too slow. The man caught sight of him and demanded to know who said he was allowed to leave. He mentioned that the person earlier had been Dean Yu of the Extraordinary Academy and called it a pitiful death, then suggested using Lin Feng's blood and bones as a sacrifice in his memory. Lin Feng realized he couldn't break free at all. The terrifying man had him completely trapped. He tried to calm down and think, desperately searching for anything he could use to drive the guy away. Lin Feng suddenly noticed a derived skill under his maxed-out farm tool mastery, something called farm tool summoning. While taking out his tool, he warned that sacrifices were something a person should handle themselves, otherwise they'd end up in the 18th level of hell. The man was stunned and couldn't believe a mere farmer class had managed to injure him. Lin Feng muttered that this was it, and in the next moment, a powerful burst of energy erupted from his body, sending the enemy flying. But the surrounding energy didn't settle. It kept surging higher and higher. The enemy cursed, recognizing it as the marking formation of a demon array dancer. Since things had come to this, he decided to take over Lin Feng's body and escape. His entire soul suddenly plunged straight into Lin Feng. Inside, the voice commented that although the farmer class was the lowest rank, Lin Feng's innate talent wasn't bad, and he should consider himself lucky to become its vessel. Lin Feng replied that he had trained diligently every single day since childhood, and if the demon wanted his body, he would have to earn it. The demon dismissed him, saying that low rank was still low rank and that its power was something Lin Feng could never reach. Lin Feng thought that luck clearly wasn't on his side this time, so they might as well go out together. He prepared to strike himself with the tool. The voice demanded to know what he was doing, but Lin Feng insisted that even if they both perished, he wouldn't hand over his body. He only hoped that if he died, he wouldn't have to listen to his father's complaints in the afterlife. Before he could act, a surge of energy erupted from his heart. The demon was shocked by the dazzling light and wondered if the kid's mana was exploding. The power continued to rise, making the demon panic, saying that it was impossible. He became bound and surrounded by countless restraints before everything was swallowed in a massive explosion. A notification followed, announcing that Lin Feng had obtained a new talent, the Legacy Class Necromancer. Lin Feng regained consciousness in shock. He was still alive and could still control his body. The demon hadn't succeeded. He then realized he could also manipulate the same aura the demon had used. Checking the notification window, he saw that his class had mutated into Spirit Farmstead Master, Unique Level 1, with his stats listed as Strength 300, Constitution 300, Agility 100, Mana 10, Spirit 100, and Luck 300. His skills now included Appraisal, Reclamation, Undead Affinity, Passive, Efficient Planting, Overgrowth, Beginner, Rapid Harvest, Undead Summoning, Beginner, Increased Yield, Soul Siphon, Passive, and Farm Tool Mastery at max level. Lin Feng noticed that his level had reset to 1, but all the stats from his max level farmer class were still intact. He realized that his mana had increased because of that bastard soul power, which meant that when he leveled up again, his stats could break past a normal farmer's limits. There was also a new skill, Undead Summoning. He wondered if he could actually summon the undead and hoped he wouldn't end up summoning that guy. He experimented by channeling magic through both hands, trying different combinations. The farmer's mana and the necromancer's mana began to fuse together. Closing his eyes, he thought through the possibilities. His class tree hadn't changed. He hadn't lost the farmer class. Instead, he had gained another one. Necromancer. The person who entered his body had really been a legendary legacy class holder, which made him question whether the man was actually dead. He could feel that this power wasn't fully his yet. If he failed to tame it and convert it completely, not only would his farmer class collapse and disappear, but his consciousness would eventually be devoured again. He also muttered that the disgusting yellow glow really did look the part. He attempted a summoning. A magic circle appeared, and from it emerged you, Undead Sage at level 1, and He Shao, Undead Wild Hunt at level 1. Lin Fong realized it was truly them. Even though their levels had been reset, they still retained their battle instincts and could level up again. He sensed the enforcement team approaching and knew he had to leave immediately. No one would believe that an ordinary farmer had killed two extraordinary individuals, and if his current situation was exposed, it could lead to fatal consequences. His top priority was to find a place with shelter, resources, and hidden land where he could experiment with this dangerous new power and turn his father's theories into reality. One day later, at Lin Fong's farmland, he noted that an entire day had passed and the necromancer's influence on his class still hadn't faded. A TV broadcast played in the background, announcing that it was the birthday of the old agronomy teacher. While using magic on the crops, Lin Fong observed that everything catalyzed by his new power had started turning strange, and the more they grew, the stranger and scarier they became. The crops had become so strange that they were even snatching birds straight out of the sky. Lin Fong couldn't believe what he was seeing. If anyone else witnessed it, they would probably assume the demon clan had invaded. He decided he needed to get rid of it immediately. He later realized that the new mana had caused an ordinary crop to undergo such a terrifying mutation. If he could control this power and guide it properly, he might be able to cultivate the unique varieties his father had always envisioned but never succeeded in creating, the kind of high-value crops that could strengthen a person's class. On the TV, the same news anchor interrupted the broadcast with an urgent wanted notice. The legacy class holder, Necromancer He Shao, had launched a rebellion the previous day and murdered Dean Yu. His crimes were described as heinous, and anyone providing information would be rewarded, while anyone sheltering him would be treated as an accomplice. Lin Fong realized he had to be extremely careful. The Necromancer's undead power absolutely couldn't be revealed. He needed to think of a name for his undead followers to avoid suspicion. He suddenly came up with the idea of calling them farmhands. His class panel listed him as a spirit farmstead master, so having a few helpers was perfectly normal. The news continued, stating that in order to deal with the increasing pressure from the Demon Clan, the Extraordinary Academy was expanding enrollment. All candidates who passed the examination would gain preferential access to Academy resources and be granted a private manor for cultivating high-tier crops, along with special subsidies. Enrolled students could also hire farmers to grow high-recovery crops for them. Lin Fong thought that the Academy's land was safe, fertile, and resource-rich, exactly what he needed right now. He had to get in. The Necromancer's identity was a time bomb, but a spirit farmstead master was just a farmer in everyone else's eyes. At the Extraordinary Academy registration plaza, Lin Fong waited in line with the others. When asked for his information, name, age, awakened class, and level, he introduced himself as Lin Fong, 18 years old, with the class Spirit Farmstead Master, level 1. The examiner checked Lin Fong's information on the paper and muttered that he had never heard of a Spirit Farmstead Master before. He assumed it was just another non-combat class trying to sneak through and told Lin Fong to release his class aura. Lin Fong did as instructed, but after sensing it, the examiner clicked his tongue and said it was just the useless aura of a farmer class. He called for the next person and told Lin Fong not to waste his time. The people waiting nearby burst into laughter. Someone mocked him for making up such a ridiculous class name and said that a level 1 farmer trash actually dared to register. Another person told him to hurry back to his fields. The student in front even tried flattering the instructor, saying that he wouldn't hire someone like Lin Fong to farm for him and that he shouldn't drag down the school's strength. Lin Fong insisted that his class was a mutated type and asked the instructor to give him a chance, saying his fundamentals were solid. The instructor scoffed and questioned what kind of fundamentals a level 1 piece of trash could possibly have. He ordered security to throw him out. Before they could touch him, Lin Fong quickly held up the admission brochure and pointed out that it clearly stated all class users were allowed to take the exam, warning that he would report them if necessary. He even threatened to contact the Supervision Bureau, saying there was a teacher preventing him from taking the academy exam. The instructor immediately stopped and shouted at him for daring to make such threats, promising that he would make Lin Fong suffer the consequences. He declared that there was no way a level 1 farmer could pass the test anyway. Some of the people in line whispered that the instructor was going too far. Even if Lin Fong had a farmer class, turning him away was one thing, but humiliating him like this was unnecessary. Someone mentioned that the instructor had failed his own promotion and had been sent to the admissions office, which might explain his mood. The instructor then yelled that anyone who didn't want to take the exam could get lost. Later, Lin Fong was moved to another testing area, where the instructor sneered at the group and told them it wasn't too late to admit defeat and kowtow in thanks for being allowed to leave. Lin Fong thought the process was too slow. He summoned his followers and instructed them that waiting for the rabbits to wander into the traps would take forever. He ordered them to quietly eliminate the demon-horned rabbits roaming nearby without letting anyone else notice. The summoned beings rushed into the surrounding forest and carried out his orders exactly. They wiped out so many rabbits that it was hard to believe. Even Lin Fong was stunned. He thought that the 2 summons were unbelievably strong even at level 1 and felt as if he had struck gold. Soon after, the bell rang and the instructor announced that time was up. All candidates were told to come out and hand over the rabbit horns they had collected. The first student stepped forward with only 2 and was immediately declared a failure. Another came with 3 and was also marked as failed. Someone arrived empty-handed, and the instructor called him useless trash and told him to get as far away as possible. People whispered that there were usually plenty of rabbits. Why had they been so hard to find this time? One student managed to bring 4 horns, which the instructor considered decent, mentioning that some didn't even get one and would have to wait for the next enrollment expansion. Eventually, Lin Fong and the instructor came face to face. The instructor mocked him and demanded his haul, betting that he didn't have a single horn. But Lin Fong had collected so many that he needed a teleportation circle to bring them all out. The pile was overwhelming. The instructor was left staring with his mouth wide open, and even the student behind him couldn't hide his shock. The instructor counted a total of 500 demon-horned rabbit horns. Lin Fong calmly repeated that the total was 500 and asked if he would like to count them again. The instructor accused him of cheating. At that moment, the director arrived and cut him off, scolding him for making things difficult for a child at his age and demanding to know who had taught him such behavior. The instructor panicked at the sight of the director and nervously asked why he was there. The director said that if he hadn't come, all his pet rabbits would have been wiped out by someone with no professional ethics. He then informed Lin Fong that he had passed the preliminary exam. Lin Fong immediately bowed and thanked the director for his fairness. The director remarked that Lin Fong felt strangely familiar, which made Lin Fong uneasy. He worried that he had already been exposed, the last thing he needed after making it this far. The director suddenly asked Lin Fong what his relationship was with Professor Lin Xie. Lin Fong fell silent for a moment, relieved that the director didn't seem to have noticed anything unusual about his class. He then replied that Lin Xie was his father and asked if the director knew him. The director immediately brightened, saying that Lin Fong was the son of an old friend. Judging from the situation, he asked if Lin Fong was planning to enroll in the academy and wondered if he was facing any difficulties, offering to open a back door for him if needed. Before he could say anything else, a female director walked over and reminded him that everyone was watching. The man suddenly noticed the gazes around him and tried to play it off, saying he had only been speaking casually. He told Lin Fong that his uncle had urgent matters to handle first, but once Lin Fong enrolled, he would personally show him around the academy. Lin Fong couldn't shake the feeling that the teaching director seemed incredibly unreliable. The female director then addressed the students, telling those who passed the preliminary exam to follow her. She encouraged the ones who failed not to be discouraged, reminding them there would always be a next time. At the Extraordinary Academy, Sunwheel Branch Investigation Room, someone analyzed that Dean Yu Yi and He Xiao had disappeared at the same time. He believed that Dean Yu Yi must have discovered He Xiao's secret and been caught during his investigation, leading to both of them taking each other down. He insisted that a third party must have stolen He Xiao's legacy talent. He concluded that as long as they found the person who obtained the undead talent, they would uncover the truth. Another staff member told him they understood his eagerness to prove himself, but asked him to stop making such brainless speculations. Tuka complained that none of them believed him, promising that he would find evidence sooner or later. Some staff members wondered if they should stop him, pointing out that he was backed by the Duke and getting involved might be inappropriate. Someone else responded that it was better to let him go, since the Sunwheel Academy was meant for cultivating elites, not for allowing people to shove their way in just for status. Just then, the director entered and announced that orders had come from above. Once He Xiao was found, they were to eliminate him on sight. One person asked what they should do if He Xiao was already dead. The reply was that he might have changed his appearance, and that anyone using necromancer skills should be eliminated without hesitation. At the Extraordinary Academy Re-Examination Mission Hall, the female director announced the re-examination requirements. All students were to clear the Level 5 special dungeon outside the city, the Demon-Horned Beast Lair, within a 3-hour time limit. The students immediately started panicking. They said that a level 5 dungeon was already pushing it when most of them were only level 4 or 5. Grinding down the final boss might barely be possible, but completing it within 3 hours sounded way too difficult, and they wondered if anyone could realistically do it. She clarified that they weren't expected to clear it alone. They were allowed to form teams with a maximum size of 5 people. After forming a party, they were to report back to her to register and start the timer. The hall instantly descended into chaos. Students shouted that they were looking for groups. Someone needed 2 more and wanted a strong front row warrior. Another claimed to be an elemental mage with explosive damage and was looking for a team, and one kid called out that he was just a little boy and asked if any big brothers would carry him. Meanwhile, Lin Feng was occupied with his status window when someone approached. He looked up to see a girl introducing herself as a level 7 magic type class user. She said she had seen his preliminary exam results and believed anyone who could kill that many demon-horned rabbits must be extremely strong. She politely asked if she could team up with him. Lin Feng thought that a level 7 player was definitely strong enough to solo the dungeon. If he were still just a farmer, he would have gladly accepted the offer. But his necromancer abilities absolutely couldn't be exposed, so he chose to decline. He told her he preferred to act alone. She smiled, wished him a successful clear, and walked away. Lin Feng then went to the instructor, who questioned why he didn't have a team, and reminded him that the dungeon's difficulty shouldn't be underestimated. Lin Feng simply asked to be issued the mission. The instructor handed it over and asked if he was aiming for the solo clear reward, the Black Bear Gale, which was an enormous boost for low-level players, but warned him not to overestimate himself. Lin Feng thanked him for the reminder. Soon after, Lin Feng stood outside the entrance of the Demon-Horned Beast Lair alongside the other students and instructors. The instructor looked at him again and asked where his teammates were. Lin Feng stated that he was entering alone. The instructor laughed and told him that a level 5 dungeon was far too dangerous for a single person, suggesting he return after finding teammates. Lin Feng reminded him that the rules allowed for solo entry. Another instructor guessed that he was probably aiming for the solo clear reward, the Black Bear Gale. Someone else commented that he had guts, but should consider whether he actually had the strength for it. In the end, they simply wished him good luck. Lin Feng stepped into the demon-horned beast lair. Inside, the environment was completely chaotic. Monsters with long, whipping tongues were everywhere. Lin Feng noted that level 3 and level 4 monsters posed no threat to him anymore. With his summons at level 6, they could take those creatures down effortlessly. He sent energy through his body and observed that his health remained stable. Although the guide mentioned that there would be many monsters, the number he encountered was far beyond expectations. Still, he decided it was the perfect chance to test his new summoning method. From the shadows of the cave, countless eyes watched him. He activated undead summoning, and this time, the undead that appeared were the very lizard-type monsters that had attacked him earlier with their long tongues. He ordered his minions to charge, and they immediately rushed forward, tearing through the surrounding creatures. Lin Feng observed that monster form undead retained certain traits from their pre-death state. They were extremely aggressive but had low intelligence and could only follow simple commands. They also consumed less mana. He wondered if they could handle chores like carrying water when they weren't fighting, since that would be convenient. He then sent his stronger summons into the fray as well. Once those entered the battlefield, any monster that appeared before them was instantly wiped out. While clearing the dungeon, Lin Feng was already thinking about other uses for his summons. He noted that humanoid undead had higher intelligence, could use their pre-death skills, and were more flexible in combat. In the future, he planned to have them handle tasks like weeding and fertilizing the fields. As more monsters were defeated, a notification appeared announcing that he had reached level 7. Lin Feng realized that only half an hour had passed and he was already standing before the boss room. At the deepest part of the dungeon, he found the boss, a massive demonic bear bound in chains, roaring furiously. Lin Feng considered it the perfect chance to test his overall combat strength and summoned all his units at once. He instructed Hachi to pin the boss from the front, ordered another to weaken it with curses, and had the rest harass its weak points. His summons executed the commands smoothly, and he noticed their coordination improving. He continuously restored his mana, since maintaining control over such powerful summons required a large amount. Before long, his stronger units completely overwhelmed the boss and everything nearby. A notification followed, stating that he had reached level 8, and a pile of loot appeared. Lin Feng was disappointed to see only a 10-point increase in stamina, calling it useless and noting that it wasn't even as good as the buff from his batch of supercrops. A settlement notification then calculated the dungeon rewards and confirmed his current classes, Farmer and Necromancer, before distributing the corresponding rewards. Lin Feng realized that the dungeon settlement had actually given him 2 sets of rewards. He wondered if it was because he was dual-classed, and if dungeon rewards could be doubled, then perhaps there was room for manipulation using the crops he grew as well. Outside the dungeon, the other students were stunned. They refused to believe he had completed the run alone. They insisted it was impossible and claimed he must have gone into the cave just for show without actually going deep inside. Someone pointed out that he was completely clean and couldn't have possibly fought against a pack of demonic beasts. Lin Feng ignored the speculation and went straight to the instructor, reporting that he was there to turn in the mission. When the instructor checked the results, she was shocked that he had actually passed, and done it solo. Lin Feng simply laughed and smiled. The instructor informed Lin Feng that she would submit the mission scroll to the Academic Affairs Office. She reminded him that solo clearing a dungeon was far too risky, and that if a freshman died right after entering the academy, it would create a huge problem. Lin Feng thanked her and said he understood. She told him that the final instructor interview would begin in the academy auditorium and suggested that he rest first. After leaving the building, Lin Feng noticed that everyone around him kept staring. Meanwhile, the instructor silently hoped another teacher would drill some caution into him, since surviving in the academy would be difficult if he stayed this reckless. Lin Feng continued walking when he sensed 2 people trailing behind him. He quietly began preparing his magic while the 2 monitored him from a distance. One whispered that since he had solo cleared the dungeon, his strength clearly wasn't simple and wondered if they were making a mistake. Another dismissed the concern, pointing out that no matter how strong he was still under level 10, so his power was limited. A third noted that Lin Feng had just come out of the dungeon and must have consumed a lot of energy, and no one had seen him recover. They planned to overwhelm him with numbers and were clearly after the Demon Bear Gale reward that granted 10 stamina. When they saw him walking farther away, they panicked and decided to act immediately. They called out for him to stop, addressing him as Farmer. Lin Feng asked if they were shouting at him. They struck strange poses and accused him of taking so many rewards by himself, asking if he wasn't afraid of bursting from them. One claimed he must have gotten dogshit luck and picked up a bargain. Another demanded that he hand over the Demon Bear Gale and the skill scroll. The third warned him to be sensible, or they would teach a farmer the power of a combat class. Lin Feng was a little embarrassed by the scene and asked why, out of all the examinees, they had chosen him. One of them asked if he was pretending not to know. Another explained that the exclusive reward for a solo clear, the Demon Bear Gale, was valuable and added 10 stamina, and that such an item wasn't something a farmer should be holding. Lin Feng couldn't believe their fuss. He thought that if 10 stamina was considered amazing, then the watermelons he grew every summer could add the same amount without needing to struggle through a dungeon. He casually asked if the item they were talking about was the one he was holding. The moment they saw the item, all 3 of them became greedy and demanded that Lin Feng hand it over. But before anyone could touch it, the item burst into flames and was instantly destroyed. A voice suddenly asked what they thought they were doing. The level 7 girl from earlier Ailing had arrived. She reminded them that private fighting was prohibited inside the academy and asked if they wanted to be disqualified. One of the boys told her the matter had nothing to do with her, and that she shouldn't interfere. Ailing replied that if she couldn't stand watching it happen, then it absolutely had something to do with her. She warned them to leave immediately or she would report them to the instructor and see who suffered more. The boys told her to go ahead and report, assuming she wouldn't get the chance. Since she insisted on protecting a farmer, they planned to deal with her as well. They rushed forward, declaring they would finish things quickly. Lin Feng wondered if she could handle the situation alone. Since she was a level 7 class user, she should be strong enough to deal deal with a few small fry. Ailing suggested that they join forces, but when she turned around, Lin Feng had already disappeared. From somewhere off to the side, Lin Feng tossed something back and thanked her for her help, saying the item was hers now. Ailing stared in disbelief as all three enemies charged at her. She wondered how she had gone from helping someone to being robbed. Later, inside a temporary independent restroom, Lin Feng examined the skill scroll that had dropped in the dungeon and found it useless in its current state. He wondered why and began injecting mana into it. A notification appeared. Realized new skill, Special Cultivation, Beginner, consumes mana and specific materials to cultivate and strengthen undead summons. Has a chance to increase their level, improve quality, or unlock new skills. Lin Feng confirmed that it worked and realized he needed to infuse mana from both of his classes simultaneously to activate it. He summoned his units and decided to test the new skill. After using Special Cultivation, both of his main summons advanced to level 8. The Demon-Horned Bear reached level 9, and the Demon-Horned Lizard Eagle advanced to level 7. Lin Feng was very satisfied with the results. Seeing how powerful his newly strengthened summons had become, Lin Feng couldn't help thinking that the only downside was not having new land to experiment on. He didn't want to ruin the fields at home just to test strange crops. He then spotted the girl from earlier. She called him Demon Bear Guy, but Lin Feng simply laughed and reminded her that the item belonged to her. She insisted that something so valuable couldn't possibly be given away for free, but Lin Feng still couldn't understand why anyone would treat such rotten material like a treasure. She wondered if she heard him correctly. Rotten? Lin Feng later headed deep into the forest, checking his surroundings to make sure no one was nearby. He began channeling his magic, wanting to see what effect the new skill might have on crops. A monstrous plant sprouted, but at first glance, it didn't seem any different from before. Then he noticed something shocking. The crop was moving. He stared in disbelief, amazed that the plants could actually move on their own. Meanwhile, a spirit energy detector registered unusual readings, and someone began tracking them. Tuka sensed Necromancer aura and rushed to investigate, convinced his guess was right. He planned to eliminate the source immediately. He soon came across Lin Feng, who happened to be walking past. Tuka grabbed him by the shoulder and asked if he was a farmer. Lin Feng wondered if Tuka had been personally wronged by a farmer or something. Disgust flashed across Tuka's face as he pulled his hand back. He demanded to know whether Lin Feng had seen a suspicious person nearby. Lin Feng was briefly caught off guard, but replied that he actually had. Tuka urgently asked where, and Lin Feng pointed straight at him, saying the person was right there. Tuka was furious that a mere farmer dared say such a thing. He declared himself an elite of the Sunwheel Academy and the nephew of the Iron Lion Duke. For a lowly farmer to be so rude to him was unforgivable, and he threatened to take Lin Feng down on the spot. Deep in the woods, Tuka's roar echoed as his body began transforming. Enraged by Lin Feng's words, he declared that a lowly farmer would pay a heavy price for such stupidity. His fury triggered a beast form transformation. His size expanded, muscles bulged, and his aura blasted through the forest, shaking trees and sending rubble flying. Lin Feng had to shield his face just to keep debris out of his eyes. Lin Feng then muttered, "Taste this," while thinking about how the monk's hood in his field had accidentally been corroded by undead mana and gained a paralysis effect. The last time he tried some himself, he had been numb and unable to move for an entire day. Ground into powder, the stuff functioned perfectly as a natural anesthetic. He tossed the powder toward the raging beast. Tuka, blinded by anger, inhaled it without realizing. Within moments, his vision blurred, his limbs weakened, and dizziness hit him hard. He couldn't believe his strength was suddenly draining. Tuka demanded to know what method Lin Feng had used. Lin Feng calmly stood there, fingers pinching his nose shut, so he wouldn't inhale any of the powder himself. He explained that it was just monk's hood powder, something commonly found in fields, the very places Tuka claimed to despise. And now, that simple farmer's material had completely taken down the Duke's nephew. Lin Feng asked whether he still believed farmers were useless. If so, he called him stupid, saying farmers could do plenty of crazy things, sometimes more than combat classes, and could even beat them. Then, while Tuka lay paralyzed, Lin Feng walked up and delivered a solid punch straight to his beast form head. Later, when the transformation finally wore off, Tuka was seen bound tightly to a tree. Lin Feng told him that if he couldn't even beat a farmer, then he had no right calling himself an elite. He said he'd leave him there to cool off, and that when someone eventually found him, he should consider it a lesson learned. Suddenly, an academy-wide announcement called for all candidates to gather at the auditorium for the instructor interview. Lin Feng realized the interview was starting and rushed off, knowing he absolutely couldn't miss it. Outside the Extraordinary Academy auditorium, crowds had gathered. Many candidates weren't even interested in studying. They were just there for the girls, dreaming of a luxurious, carefree life funded entirely by their families, enjoying everything without effort or responsibility. Before real life eventually crushes their dreams, the pampered boys outside the auditorium keep gossiping as Lin Feng walks by. Someone whispers that he was the one who solo cleared the level 5 dungeon. Another claims he only knows how to run away and live off a woman. Someone else says he's far worse than Siqi and Bogu. Another adds that while Lin Feng might be strong compared to normal candidates, he himself is a level 5 elite, so the advantage is clearly his. Ailing approaches Lin Feng and tries handing the item back again, insisting she doesn't want to keep it. Lin Feng repeats that she should keep it. He has no use for it at all. He casually munches on something, and a notification pops up. Temporary Constitution +2. Temporary Constitution +2. People nearby are still staring at him instead of paying attention to their girls, who suddenly seem less interesting compared to the mysterious farmer who cleared a dungeon alone. Lin Feng, however, doesn't understand any of the fuss. He wonders why everyone treats such junk like a treasure and whether they're all idiots. Inside the auditorium, rows of instructors sit behind long tables. One of them announces that during the interview, while instructors choose their students, students also choose their instructors. They are meant to make each other successful. Students whose names are called should step forward. The first candidate called is Xiyan. He walks forward, introduces himself as a level 6 Earth Attribute warrior, and demonstrates his ability by summoning rock armor. Aura surges around him and his stone armor looks solid. Impressive, though nothing compared to Master Chief. One instructor nods in approval and introduces himself as a level 44 Earth Berserker, asking if Xiyan would like him as an instructor. Xiyan agrees immediately, practically vibrating with excitement. Next, the naming Wu is called, and then Lin Feng. He stands up and walks toward the panel. But even now, people all around continue staring at him with that same thick mix of jealousy, suspicion, and hatred. Even with all the stares and whispered judgments drilling into his back, Lin Feng walked forward without a care. He introduced himself calmly. "I am Lin Feng, level 8, occupation Spirit Farm Lord." His aura flared out. Several girls quietly gasped. One whispered that reaching level 8 at his age was impressive. Another pointed out that he was still just a farmer, and that she wasn't interested in farmers. A guy scoffed that the Extraordinary Academy existed to train elites for the front lines, not raise ordinary people into future cannon fodder. Another instructor tried to calm the rising tension, noting that Lin Feng's preliminary test and retest results were both excellent, so he clearly had skill and talent. The director cleared his throat and suggested conducting a combat ability assessment since opinions differed so much. All the instructors immediately agreed. One woman approved with a simple nod, and another instructor muttered that he didn't care either way. He just wanted to go home and eat something nice. The director turned to Lin Feng and asked whether he was willing. He reminded him that the ultimate purpose of training here was to send talent to the front lines against the demon clan. Without combat potential, joining the front lines would only result in a meaningless sacrifice. Lin Feng's mind raced. A combat ability test. Right now, openly fighting would risk revealing his necromancer abilities, something he absolutely could not allow. He needed to be extremely cautious. For now, he forced a pleasant smile, hiding every trace of unease, and said he agreed. Later, at a temporary clearing within the auditorium grounds, everyone gathered to watch. The examiner, a powerful instructor, stood across from Lin Feng. He explained that the test was simple. Last 5 minutes against him to prove he had combat potential. The moment he activated his power, the ground trembled. His aura surged outward like a storm. The watching students buckled under the pressure. Many were forced to their knees, unable to withstand the weight of his spiritual force. They whispered in awe, asking whether this was truly the pressure of someone above level 40. Everyone in the audience suddenly froze. Through the crushing pressure of a level 44 instructor, they saw something that made their jaws drop. A normal little farmer was still standing there. He wasn't trembling, wasn't on his knees, wasn't gasping for breath like everyone else. He was simply bowing slightly, while striking a pose suspiciously similar to Iron Man charging his repulsors. Someone whispered in disbelief that the guy was acting like nothing was happening. The instructor seemed impressed and praised him, saying that just for his persistence, he would look highly upon him. He encouraged Lin Feng to use all his abilities and attack with full power. Hearing that, Lin Feng sprang into action. He admitted inwardly that the pressure of a level 44 expert was indeed terrifying. terrifying, but still within what he could handle for now. He gathered mana in his hands, forming a glowing orb, and called out, "Come out, my servants!" Wrapped in spiraling threads of nature mana, the undead summon began materializing. Lin Feng felt relieved it worked. Masking undead creatures with nature mana effectively hid their necromancer aura. It was the only way he could safely summon without exposing his forbidden abilities. A vague, cabbage-shaped bear silhouette emerged first. Lin Feng thought that honestly, who would ever guess this cabbage-headed bear was actually an undead? When the summoning finished, the audience gasped. They commented that it looked like a rare variant occupation, marveling at the richness of the nature mana surrounding the creature. Interest crackled through the crowd. They were finally seeing something unusual. The instructor drew his blades, both covered in their own blazing aura. The summon and the instructor stood face to face. The instructor had no idea what kind of monster he was about to fight. Both charged at each other at full speed, and their clash sent shockwaves of aura rippling across the clearing. The instructor began attacking wildly, screaming as he pushed forward. The summon staggered under the barrage, showing signs of strain. Watching from the sidelines, the director commented that the summon was remarkably loyal. Any other summoned creature would have been forcibly unsummoned after taking that much damage, but this one was still stubbornly pushing forward, even throwing punches. The instructor dodged, and the director clicked his tongue in disappointment, wondering if old G, the instructor, was simply too weak. He couldn't understand why the fight looked so unimpressive from old G's side. Meanwhile, Lin Feng remained completely calm. He knew the truth. They're undead. They don't feel pain, and they don't make a fuss. These flesh wounds only take a tiny bit of mana to recover from. That's why they don't care. The instructor was thinking that he originally just wanted to show off in front of the students. But he hadn't expected Lin Feng to actually be pretty talented. The disappointed look on the director's face was unbearable, so he decided he needed to use something real. He told Lin Feng not to worry, and that he would compensate him later for the destroyed summon. Then he told him to watch closely. Normally, summoners had to pay a price to form contracts with their creatures. Once a summon died, the contract ended, finished, gone for good. That was common knowledge. The instructor activated Berserker skill, Bloodthirst, and with a massive punch, the undead summon was knocked backwards. Its form cracked apart like shattered stone and then dissolved, disappearing completely. The instructor stood smugly with his arms crossed, clearly satisfied with himself. He confidently announced that Lin Feng must feel terrible having his summon destroyed, and said it was fine to cry it out. He liked students with genuine emotions. In the instructor's imagination, Lin Feng was already sniffling like a pitiful farmer child whose toy had been broken, but reality was the exact opposite. Lin Feng stood there completely expressionless. Not sad, not panicked, not even mildly bothered. His face was so unreadable that no one could figure out what he was thinking. The instructor was confused. He wondered if Lin Feng was so overwhelmed with sadness that he'd gone numb. However, the next moment, countless vines burst out from beneath Lin Feng's feet. They wrapped forward like serpents, flying straight toward the instructor and binding him tightly before he could even blink. Shocked, he yelled angrily, demanding to know what was happening and accusing Lin Feng of playing dirty by having so many summons. The vines squeezed until the instructor struggled, until suddenly, with a furious shout and a surge of power, he snapped them apart. The director finally intervened, telling them both to stop. He declared that Lin Feng had proven himself and was qualified to become a student of the Extraordinary Academy. However, he added that all nature-type instructors were currently deployed at the battlefield, so there was no one available to teach Lin Feng for the time being. Lin Feng immediately asked the most important question. Then what about my cultivation resources? The director assured Lin Feng that the Academy would never deduct anyone's cultivation resources. Everything would be issued normally according to standard. He added that since Lin Feng had performed exceptionally in the exam, he was allowed to make one special request. Hearing that, Lin Feng felt like heaven had opened. Freedom and resources? Truly a paradise. So he immediately said, "Then I want a piece of land." The director blinked. That was absolutely not what he expected. For most students, a request like this was the moment to demand high-grade equipment, rare cultivation treasures, or maybe even a luxurious private hall where they could dance with beautiful girls until morning instead of studying. But this kid was different. The director confirmed if Lin Feng really didn't want any precious resources or high-tier items and only wanted land. Lin Feng laughed and explained that he was a spirit farm lord. Without land, how could he call himself one? The director nodded and agreed. He told Lin Feng there was a piece of abandoned training wasteland in the west of the city that had been idle for a long time. He granted Lin Feng permission to use it however he wanted. This was exactly what Lin Feng had hoped for. He thanked the director sincerely. The instructors then told him to go rest backstage. Later, Inside a quiet room, Lin Feng's file sat on a table. An instructor looked over it and murmured that spirit farm lord was quite an interesting occupation. A female instructor entered urgently and told the principal she had something important to report. The principal asked what it was. She handed him a delicate scroll-like object. When he opened it, the contents were shocking. The report confirmed that Tuka, their investigation team member searching for He Xiao, had been murdered by a necromancer. His body had been discovered not far from the auditorium. The report stated they suspected a necromancer had infiltrated the academy. This was a monumental problem, one that could shake the entire academy. But Lin Feng hadn't killed Tuka. He only tied him up to teach him a lesson. Whoever finished the job had framed Lin Feng deliberately, and in a place where everyone already looked down on farmers, we know exactly who they'd point their fingers at first. So I wonder what will happen next. At the training wasteland in the west of the city, Lin Feng walked across the barren ground while checking the paper in his hand. He confirmed aloud that this was indeed the place mentioned, the training wasteland in the west of Fenchuan City. A soft green glow formed in his palm as he activated the land assignment spell. A notification appeared: 100 mu of training land west of Fenchuan City. Ownership: Extraordinary Academy. Temporary rental agreement: 1 year. Exclusion barrier activated. Student Lin Feng only. Lin Feng clicked his tongue and commented that giving him only 1 year was a little stingy. But considering that most students would be heading to the battlefield after a year anyway, it was understandable. Besides, he was thrilled. He now had a whole 100 mu of land entirely under his control for an entire year. He thought this was what deserved to be called a spirit farmstead master. Everyone else might look down on the occupation, but the true madness hidden within it was something only he knew. It would allow him to control the situation from the shadows while staying above all of them. He pointed a finger upward, aura swirling violently around him, and summoned all his undead companions to the field. Now, he said, let's get to work. Immediately, the entire group of summons scattered across the land. Some were plowing the soil, others were handling water channels, some zipped across the ground like tractors, tilling rows at incredible speed. Meanwhile, Lin Feng relaxed under the sunlight, stretching comfortably. Magic really does change lives, he sighed. The ancients truly didn't deceive me. Suddenly, someone tapped him on the shoulder. Lin Feng assumed the reclamation work was done and commented that their initiative must be stronger than he expected. But one of the undead only buzzed in response. Lin Feng inspected him closely and sighed. Expecting undead to have independent consciousness was still too much, he thought. Feeling slightly disappointed, he walked away. Unbeknownst to him, the celestial undead behind him looked confused, then smirked faintly. A hint of intelligence, one Lin Feng completely missed. Lin Feng entered the greenhouse, where he began inspecting the plants inside. Floating notifications hovered above each crop. Stamina +1 permanently unripe. Stamina +1 permanently unripe. Attack power +1 permanently unripe. Life +1 temporarily unripe. Seeing the glowing notifications above the plants, Lin Feng felt genuinely happy. He thought that while other people cultivated their strength through long, bitter training, he could improve using crops, balanced nutrition, and a solid foundation. It was truly a blessing. He also felt it was a pity that only he could make crops with these effects. If he could increase the yield and let everyone improve through his plants, wouldn't the demon clan be nothing more than clay chickens and pottery dogs before them? After tending to the greenhouse, he realized that just planting the special crops wouldn't be enough. He needed to plant plenty of ordinary crops outside to camouflage everything. Otherwise, the greenhouse's secrets would be discovered, and that was the last thing he could afford. Exposure would ruin all of the insane plans he was crafting in his mind. So for now, he simply rolled up his sleeves and got to work. 3 days later, the wasteland had completely transformed, bigger, greener, more alive than anything it had been in years. Lin Feng stood in the middle of the field, shovel in hand, demonstrating to his larger summons how to dig properly. He asked if they understood and hoped they would finally grasp what he meant. A few of the undead still looked confused as they clumsily mimicked his movements, but at least they were trying. He sighed with satisfaction, thinking that having this group of helpers made planting vegetables much faster. Then he noticed one of them doing something suspicious. Lin Feng shouted, "Hey, what are you doing?" The frightened undead flinched. He had been happily munching on a plump potato. Lin Feng marched over, and the undead stiffened in fear before slowly turning his head. At that moment, a notification appeared. Undead lizard, level 6, temporary. A bone density, temporarily increasing. Defense, temporarily increasing. Lin Feng stared in disbelief. All of the undead lizards were his gains from the previous dungeon. The only difference was, this one had eaten a potato. He wondered whether undead could also receive the effects of spiritual crops. If that were true, wouldn't that be absolutely insane? In the days that followed, Lin Feng began systematically experimenting, feeding different crops to different undead and carefully recording every change, every buff, and every mutation. The research of a true spirit farmstead master had officially begun. Another figure appeared near the training wasteland, moving silently between the crops and shadows. He frowned as he observed the surroundings. He thought it was strange. When he probed the area earlier, none of these structures or plants had existed. The barrier around the land seemed flimsy to him, nothing more than a paper-thin marshy wall. He concluded he could tear through it with a single slash. He spotted only one person inside and wondered if the whole thing was a trap. The idea intrigued him. Just as he stepped forward, something beneath him triggered. He sensed it too late. He tried to stop whatever was happening, but chaos erupted instantly. Something burst out of the soil and exploded right beneath him. The sudden blast startled him, though he managed to dodge at the last second. He scoffed, saying that this level of trickery wasn't enough to deal with him. But then more of those explosive things began erupting from underground, angry, pulsing, swelling with unstable energy. Now even the intruder felt a chill crawl up his spine. He cursed, demanding to know what these things were. A chain of massive explosions followed, so intense that the shockwaves were visible from far away. The blasts all seemed rooted to a glowing green form deep beneath the ground, a magnificent being, like a fragment of the Earth's own spirit that Lin Feng had grown, watching the intruder with eerie luminous eyes. Through thick smoke, the intruder staggered back. He cursed again, saying that if he didn't need to gain the Duke's trust, he would never have come here a second time. He vowed that once he cut Lin Feng down, he wanted to see whether these explosions could stop him. He then began slicing through everything, roots, plants, vines, and all the careful work Lin Feng and his undead had put into the field. He didn't care about the effort, he only cared about destruction. But as he hacked through the growth, something unusual caught his attention. He paused and sensed a faint aura, an aura belonging to the undead. His expression changed. A memory surfaced, one from a wise priest. On this reconnaissance trip to Fangchuan City, your main mission is to find the necromancer He Chia. After our last contact, he disappeared. He has an agreement with our clan. The intruder's eyes narrowed. He wondered if this place was actually He Chia's hiding spot. But why would He Chia hide here of all places? Could he have betrayed their clan? The intruder clicked his tongue, thinking that for the secret technique of immortality, a traitor like He Chia really had no shame at all. The intruder felt an even stronger surge of energy pulsing from the plants around him. The longer he stayed, the more unstable the aura became. He decided it was better not to linger. Finding He Chia was the priority. Night turned to day. Lin Feng's morning shock. Lin Feng woke up, grabbed his tools, and headed out cheerfully. He'd already catalyzed and fertilized most of the fields yesterday. Today he would handle the remaining areas. But the moment he opened his eyes fully and looked ahead, he froze. His jaw dropped. He stared for several seconds, speechless. Then he dropped his tool with a loud clatter and sprinted toward the greenhouse. His heart pounded. His mind blanked. My greenhouse! Everything he had so carefully grown looked devastated. Above him, several figures suddenly descended from the sky. Lin Feng braced himself, thinking they were enemies, but after getting a closer look he muttered in confusion. Why would enforcement team members appear here? The enforcement officers landed and scanned the area. One of them announced that their demonic energy detector showed the source of the disturbance right at this location. They wondered why the training wasteland suddenly looked like this and questioned whether demon clan members might be lurking nearby. A notification popped up before them. This land has already been leased. The officers exchanged glances, so it wasn't unowned land after all. Still, they insisted that they couldn't rule out demon clan activity and needed to be cautious. One of them addressed Lin Feng politely, saying they were from the enforcement team, but the atmosphere was far from welcoming. Lin Feng felt extremely uneasy. Why would the enforcement team come here of all places? The lead officer explained that their instruments had detected demonic energy here and asked Lin Feng to open the barrier to allow them inside for inspection. Another added that even they weren't clear on the exact situation yet. Lin Feng's stomach tightened. Demonic energy? On the land he'd only rented a few days ago? How was that possible? Before he could respond, someone from the back, clearly irritated and impatient, snapped. How long does it take just to get a farmer to open a barrier? Tuka was just killed by by the Demon Clan, and now Demon Aura appears here? If you ask me, he's a spy. The man's tone was cold and venomous. His expression was deadly serious. Even Lin Feng felt a chill run down his spine. But sadly, the chapter ends here. If you want more and doesn't want to miss out any of the action which is about to come, subscribe right now and turn on all the notifications.